About 2 years ago, I made a video on Neptunia releases we didn't get in the West, and I've been meaning to explore this topic with other franchises. Today we'll focus on Senran Kagura. With the uncertain future of the series, I thought it'd be fun to just look at some cool stuff instead of worrying about whether Senran Kagura 7 will ever come out, or how much it'll be changed. Japan, of course, gets all the merch, but things are a bit different here in the West. The added cost of translating, the lack of a specialized retail infrastructure, and the added risk of floppage often deter companies from bringing over a lot of their cool stuff. Obviously, I won't be able to cover every single Senran Kagura thing we didn't get. I'm sure it's easy enough to miss something like, a limited edition phone card or thing, something like that. But I did my best to compile a list of some significant examples in various categories. In the games department, there's a few examples of releases we didn't get in the West. The very first game technically didn't have a Western release. You know how Pokemon Green existed only in Japan? It's somewhat like that, a little bit. We got the first Senran Kagura game in the form of Senran Kagura Burst for the Nintendo 3DS. But that game is actually a bit of a remaster of sorts. The first game in Japan was released as Senran Kagura Portrait of Girls. With Burst, they polished a few things with the combat and the gameplay, and also added the ability to play the story from Hebijo's perspective rather than just Hanzo. Despite being a bit of a technicality, I'm still gonna count it as something we didn't get, even though we kinda did. While that was a bit of a gray area there, the next two games aren't. Senran Kagura New Wave and New Link. Both are mobile games. You might remember if you watched that video about Japanese games I would have liked to see come out in the West. I did mention New Link in that video. But first, Senran Kagura New Wave. That was released November 28, 2012, but the game was shuttered October 30th, 2020. It was a card battle game and could be played on PC, 3DS, Wii U, iOS, and Android. In this game, you are a ninja instructor. The Senran Kagura wiki does have a description about the gameplay. Apparently, you play with a deck of 5 cards. You get stronger by doing missions and battling other people. Cards have various grades, I guess, of how rare they are, which seems quite standard for this genre. Not that I'm an expert. I'm usually not so fond of card games, or those card battle games, but I'd at least give it a go if it was in English. And like not shut down. You can see gameplay footage on YouTube if you're curious as to what the game was like. The graphics are very simplistic and not very thrilling to look at. Low-effort chibiness is a good description here. Despite not being available in the West, New Link did end up bestowing us with great gifts. Since it's about cards, as you can imagine, they featured some very sophisticated designs. That's an interesting pose. There's a lot of illustrations of different characters, lots of variety with the types of outfits too, so it's worth hitting up your local image board and saving some to your hard drive. Senran Kagura New Link is an iOS and Android game that came out November 29, 2017. Again, it's a card battle game, so this is the sequel to New Wave. This time the graphics are much better. We get 3D battles and cutscenes. It's visually speaking much more interesting and very much in line with regular console/PC releases. It looks like it uses the same models and definitely the same animations when we look at the cutscenes there. I don't know how exactly the gameplay was tweaked though I imagine it to be, at least somewhat similar. There's a ton of new characters. That's actually one of the reasons why I would like to see a Western release of this game. I want to know who these characters are. It does seem unlikely though, so I don't expect this game to ever be translated into English. These games usually never are. Because of several crossover tie-ins, there's also several guest appearances from Dead or Alive, Ikitosen, KOF, Queen's Blade, and High School DxD characters. So that's pretty cool. Of course, that has resulted in a multitude of art that can be found on the internet. So basically, it's like with New Wave, except there's a lot more content here in New Link. A lot of the illustrations are themed as well, like the Gantz tie-in or the whole lingerie wedding dresses, for instance. Until recently, there was also a few games we only got as digital games. Bon Appetit and Reflections only became available physically after Limited Run Games released them. Oddly enough, Japan doesn't have a physical release of Reflections at all. There's one for the Asian market, and that was the only way to get it physically before the Limited Run Games thing. Also, shout out to Europe since they got Burst for the 3DS physically, unlike North America. Something worth looking at are some of the limited editions. I'm not going to go through every single limited edition, but it is worth bringing up since JDM SKLEs are a bit more elaborate in their contents. than their Western counterparts. Again, I have to mention Europe because somehow they managed to get better LE options than North America. Deep Crimson for the 3DS and Peach Beach Splash could be had with OPI mousepads, for instance. But all that pales in comparison to Japan. One thing you can do is browse through websites like Play Asia, for example. Those specialty shops that allow you to get Japanese market items. Because a lot of them, they keep old listings up. Often you'll find not only more comprehensive limited editions, but different ones for the same game. Japan does that a lot. Not only are there various tiers, but certain retailers will have exclusive LEs. There's an example here with Peach Beach Splash. There's one LE with a Yumi OPI mousepad, so that's good. But the Famitsu edition had a butt mousepad, so that was unique to that edition. It's fun to look through and see how different all the LEs can be. And also, here's a tip, by the way. Oftentimes, but not always, you'll find Japanese limited editions are cheaper in the used market compared to NA or Euro games. So keep your eyes out. You might be able to find a good deal on something, especially if you're interested in some of the merch that they contain. Alright, on to anime. Senran Kagura has had 2 anime seasons so far. The first one was called Senran Kagura Ninja Flash and was broadcast 2013. The studio responsible was Artland. Anyways, the second season was called Senran Kagura Shinobi Master. The name of that Vita game was stuck in my head, I guess. And that aired in 2018. This time the anime was produced by TNK. TNK have some experience with, let's say, some more controversial content. They animated School Days, so that's already a good way to start, right? High School DxD as well, before they switched studios anyways. Kanagawa Jet Girls, and also redo of Healer. Both seasons of Senran Kagura are available in North America through Funimation. Fun fact, the anime is the only Senran Kagura thing that has an English dub. The games are all Japanese with subtitles. I have both seasons on Blu-ray, but I have yet to watch them. I know, a fan such as myself should have really watched that already. Despite that, I do know that the Blu-rays aren't complete here, as the first season is missing 6 bonus episodes. And a 2015 OVA that came out between the 2 seasons, which was produced by Hoods Entertainment, isn't available to watch either. And that's true with physical discs and streaming. I think that's a bit of a shame. The omission of OVAs seems to be a thing that happens a bit too often in my opinion. I wish they'd stop, ignoring OVAs. They're usually only included if they are released like right after the season. But if there's like a couple of years in between them, they'll never add it to the Blu-ray release. I mean, they really should do that. Let's say something comes out in 2015, why not just include it in the 2018 anime? You may have noticed that in Japan, Blu-ray and DVD sales are done differently. Normally what happens over here is that DVDs and Blu-rays get released a few months after the anime stops airing. And it's usually the entire season in one package, with the occasional show getting perhaps a limited edition release. In Japan, they release shows in volumes with only 2 episodes on a disc while the show is still ongoing. They're unfortunately really expensive. But if you have the means, then you'll be rewarded with art books, special packaging, with like unique illustrations. There's drama CDs and other bits like that. Of course, they also compile everything together, and have like the complete season in 2 discs or something like that. But spreading things out in volumes is quite common to see. You'll notice that sort of thing happening a lot. In Japan, there's limited editions of everything and even different LEs depending which store you buy it from. Like I mentioned before with the Famitsu edition there, with Peach Beach Splash. In the West, it's usually all compiled together for maximum value, though a lot of times that means things have been omitted because the content is more cherry-picked. There are a few Senran Kagura mangas, though only one series was released here in North America. 7 Seas Entertainment published the 3-volume manga in the West as Senran Kagura Skirting Shadows. The art matches the original style fairly well, and the story follows that of the first game. I've noticed that finding new copies is difficult now. It's either digital, buy used, or spend more money to get a fresh copy, so that's a bit unfortunate. It's probably because it's not super popular and it was released in 2013, so. The original run in Japan was from August 27, 2011 to December 27, 2014. It was in a sign-in magazine called Monthly Comic Alive. So that is what we did get. Here's what we didn't get. Wikipedia has a list here of a few. There's Senran Kagura Guren no Uroboros, which is a spin-off of Skirting Shadows drawn by the same artist. This manga focuses on Hamura's group. It also spans 3 volumes. It ran in a shonen magazine for some reason this time, Monthly Comic Rex, and that went from September 27, 2011 to July 27, 2013. Senran Kagura Spark was published in Famitsu Comic Clear, a seinen magazine. That went from August 19, 2011 to February 17, 2012. That one seems to be about Ikaruga and Katsuragi specifically. It's a prequel, which is why Ikaruga has short hair at first. Later on, once they meet Asuka, Ikaruga's hair is, as long as we know it. There's 2 more that I don't have much info on, unfortunately. Senshi Bankou no Haruka seems to be based on the Haruka and Hibari arc. And then there's Senran Enji Kyonyuu-gumi, which looks all chibi-like. And I guess it's a more light-hearted interpretation of the story. Maybe it's a gag manga. With that art style, it can't be like, a serious story, right? Both of those, anyways, ran from September 7, 2012 to February 1st, 2013. But I don't know in what magazines they ran in originally or what their intended demographic is. Now, those were listed on Wikipedia, and if you've seen the Neptunia video on this topic, then you'll probably remember the Wikipedia article on Nep mangas being wrong. So I went and looked to see if there's perhaps some more manga that wasn't listed there, and it looks like there is. When doing some research for the video, about something else, I actually ran across this 4-koma or 4-panel comic version based on Burst. It had Hamura's crew on the cover, at least on the first volume. Seems like this one's 3 volumes overall. I also saw a Shinobi Versus and Burst anthology, each consisting of 2 volumes. Speaking of anthology, I later also found out something called After School Anthology. Hamura looks a bit put off by Asuka filling her mouth beyond capacity. Those are just the ones I found, but there may be more. Interestingly, I couldn't find any Senran Kagura light novels, so I guess those don't exist. Perhaps Kenichiro Takaki figured, it must be more visual. I guess mangas have a higher boob-to-page ratio. Let's talk about printed material, well, other than the mangas. This is where the West usually falls behind quite spectacularly, and that's the case here too. Japan still likes their printed media, so unlike a lot of places in the West, Japan still has tons of magazines and other things. The only art book we ever got was the official design works. It came out in 2015, at least 2015 here, and was published by Udon Entertainment. It's very good, and there's a lot of nice things you can say about it, like interviews and all kinds of different art. But there's no material of Estival Versus and beyond, since those weren't out yet when it was originally released in Japan. New Wave, Deep Crimson, and Bon Appetit are cited as being the newest games in the book. One thing you can do is browse eBay or specialty sites like Goods Republic, and you'll see a bunch of art books we didn't get. It is true, however, that limited editions often get art books, so it's not like we didn't get anything, but it's certainly, not a large form factor as some of the Japanese books are. While the Senran Kagura wiki should never be seen as gospel, it does list 13 art books, so it has to be at least that number, if not more. I guess there's just not enough people who buy that stuff over here, so that's why they don't bring it over. Now, this next subject I admit I'm quite ignorant about, and that's trading cards. There seems to be a number of TCG Unlimited Versus cards that exist. I don't really have much to say other than that they look really cool. If you are into this sort of thing, please comment below if you've got some useful nuggets of information. One category I'm not sure counts is figures. It's not that a figure needs, translated packaging or anything, but at the same time it's not really intended for an international market, given everything is in Japanese. I guess it's a bit of a gray area since there's more and more ways to easily obtain figures these days. But perhaps there are fans of the series who haven't really seen the figures that are or were available, so let's just briefly touch on the subject. I actually have a 1/7 scale figure of Asuka myself. It's pretty good, and there's a second channel video where I talk about it a little bit. The second channel is where I post videos that are a bit more casual, and sometimes I talk about manga and anime that I picked up, so check that out if you're interested. At first, most figures that came out were either of Asuka or Homura, as well as their crew. But after Yumi was introduced, the series started shifting their focus on her, and you can see a lot more Yumi figures than the others. There's even a lot of variations of her with different colored outfits and tanned skin options. Since figures are out of reach of Sony's meddling, there's even cast-off ones. I mean, the anime featured nippleage, so why not here? Figures of the other girls are unfortunately not that common. I really would have liked the Murasaki figure, for instance, but there's only one chibi version that exists, and that's it. So yeah, those are some of the things from Senran Kagura that we didn't get in the West. I'm pretty sure that was, I wouldn't say complete, but there was a lot of variety, I hope. And I also hope that it was a fun thing to watch for all you Senran Kagura fans. If you know about some Japan-only things that I didn't talk about, please comment below. And I also know that perhaps some Asian region watchers might know about some, Asian region-specific things that came out, because sometimes that can happen too. For example, with the very first Neptunia game, the Korean version, or the limited edition specifically, that was the one to get if you wanted the merch. So if something like that exists with Senran Kagura, please let me know. Thank you to all the Patreon supporters, some of which you can see here on the screen. Check out patreon.com/yzen to get early access to videos, behind the scenes updates, and things like that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.